Hi, this is Phil Fry, Director of Business Finance for the Sun Prairie Area School District. Given the board and the public the summary of the preliminary budget fiscal year 24-25. So lots of things to talk about tonight. You can see those listed here. I won't on this slide read all 20 of them, but lots of things to cover in the presentation tonight. So first off, the state budget. We're in the second year of the state budget, so we know that we will get $325 per student revenue limit increase. There's a pretty large increase in equalized aid for next fiscal year, 24-25, but remember that equalized aid doesn't give school district spending, it only decreases taxes. There's a very, very minimal increase in special ed aid reimbursement. Again, not nearly where we need to be on special ed reimbursement. And just remember that $325, and you'll see that on the next slide, does not keep up with inflation. It definitely has not kept up with inflation over the last 10 or 15 years. So we've lost a lot of per student increases. So this slide shows that the blue line represents what districts received on a per student increase, and the gray line represents what we would have received if we just got an inflationary increase. So we're over $3,200 behind inflationary increases. Just to put that in perspective for Sun Prairie School District, if we had that $3,200 more to spend per student, we'd have about $27 million in our budget that we could spend on an annual basis. So we spend a lot of time in the district building our budget using strategic-based budgeting. Senior leaders start back in September meeting, talking about the budget. We have a very, I won't go through all of these bullets, but a very comprehensive budget calendar that the school board approved back in December, maybe November of last year. We have a lot of data looking at comparisons using Forecast 5, and you'll see that in some future slides on this presentation. And we also use two budget forecast models to guide us on our direction for the budget and where the budget's looking for the next 5 years. So strategic budget items, when we have a strategy map for the district, and things that we're talking about or asking questions on that are, what's the student results that we're targeting? Is there professional development that need to be included? What's the budget funding source? Who's the cabinet leader for that item? Could it be used with conserved funds? And then you can see there's other things that get asked. So very targeted on where we spend money in the district. So a revenue limit calculation is how districts build their budget. Revenue limits have been in place since 1993. You use your spending authority plus 3 times the 3-year average. This year, again, revenue limits went up by $325 per student. And that revenue limit is what we have to spend on providing programs, services throughout the district. So revenue limits, again, have been in place since 1993 and really determine what a school district can spend in their budget. Part of that revenue limit, like I said, was a 3-year trend on enrollment. You can see our membership count. Think of membership count as, say, for a 4-year-old kindergarten, that counts as a 0.6 student. All our other students count as a full-time student. We also get to include summer school in that count. So you can see our 3-year trend has gone up a little bit this last year. That's good. We have a little bit positive growth. And our 3-year average for revenue limit calculation is 8,263 students on a membership basis. So enrollment's a very big part of our budget and building a budget. When we talked to the board back in January, I originally thought the budget we built on 60 students. The board said to ratchet that down to 20 students, so I have done that. APL is projecting a decrease of 22 students for next school year. Looking back at last year, though, we increased by 22 students in our membership, which is basically, when you over 8,400 kids or 8,200 kids, 0% growth. And just as the last reference point, if school started today, our district enrollment would be up 62 kids. I track enrollment very closely, weekly and then daily throughout the summer. And so I think that 20 is a very conservative number at this point. Typically, we increase quite a few students over summer, so I would guess that we would be much closer to 100 to 120 student growth. But right now, this budget is built on 20 student growth. So talking about enrollment a little bit more, 10-year history, you can see going back to 2015, we had pretty steady enrollment growth. Starting in 2019, our enrollment started to decline through those COVID years. And then again, our enrollment increased slightly this last year. On a head count basis, our enrollment increased over 60 students. And then you can also see how the economically disadvantaged percentage of the district has changed over the last 10 years. Equalized aid is a big part of our budget. Again, remember, it doesn't give us more spending, but it does offset that a potential tax increase, or it's a balance between taxes and equalized aid. There's a big increase in equalized aid projected for next year, currently 6.7%. That would be $3.7 million more in aid. And then the last bullet I want to talk about, I think you've all hopefully heard about the Milwaukee School District financial reporting delays that they've had. That has large impacts on DPI's aid projections. That's such a big district that DPI is gonna have a hard time doing projections and having accurate projections when basically 25% of the state is not reporting on what they're spending. That's Milwaukee School District. So we have to be careful, really careful with our aid projections until Milwaukee gets that figured out. General fund revenue, as I said before, we're building the budget on that $325 increase to students on a per student basis on what we can spend. We do have $300,000 remaining of ESSER 3 money that we'll spend by September 30th. So just a real small balance there. Our current budget, and you'll see this later in the actual dollars, but we are using $3.7 million for budget stabilization fund balance and professional educator pay, money that's been set aside. So we do have a deficit budget for next year of $3.7 million, and we've been pretty upfront with the board about that. Spending some now time really getting into the details of general fund. We spend about 79% of our budget, so 80% on general compensation, salary, and benefits. The second bullet is I talked about the state funding for special ed, and federal funding for special ed has not kept up with costs for special ed. So the district needs to allocate $16.7 million on top of state and federal aid to fully fund what we need to do for educating our special education students. I also put the slide in here, not that it's changed. In fact, it has not changed. Just a reminder of our class sizes across the district. Once in a while, there's maybe a strange class that might be a little bit above and sometimes a little bit below the guidelines, but in general, 99% of our classes are within these ranges. And again, those ranges have not changed over the last year. We do have some staffing changes. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but this is the categories of the staffing changes. So in the 24-25 budget, there is 3 additional teachers, no support staff, admin support, or administration. So 3 FTE added just in teachers, but 2 of that is from transfer service. That's for special ed students that moved into the district, and that money we get to add to our budget from the state. We are going down on AGR funding at Byrd, so they're reducing their FTE by a half. There is a couple or 0.5 FTE for each high school for guidance. We've heard that's an emphasis that the board has wanted, and we have put that as a budget initiative. And then if you look at all the enrollment across the district, there's lots of ups and downs, but overall, we're just having a slight increase of 0.5 FTE due to enrollment. So most of the FTE increase, again, was for transfer service. Then specifically for the groups, what are they receiving for salary and benefits? So the school board at a recent meeting approved 4.12% COLA for all the groups. So you'll see that. For teachers, that's about a $2 million increase. Teachers also can receive 24 hours of PD. If they do get 24 hours of PD, they get 1.25% added onto their salary. That's an additional about 500,000. So the total amounts of salary increase for the teachers is 5.12%. Then for the other three groups, I'll go through this quick. Again, every group's getting that 4.12%. They all also have some PD opportunities, a little bit different for each group. You can see those amounts here. Health insurance is going up, projected to go up about 12%. So remember, we start health insurance on January 1st renewal, so that'd be 6% for that fiscal year. And also, I will say the final increase has to be determined by the school board. Of course, I need to build a budget at this point, but the final increase in health insurance will be a school board action. And you can see we spend about $14 million on health insurance. Dental is projected to go up 0%, and WRS is projected to also go up 0%. We'll get that finalized the next month or so for WRS, and you can see the budget amounts for those benefits. So here's our Fund 10 operating budget. Revenues 131.7 million, expenses 135.4 million. So you can see that deficit of 3.7 million. Again, that's what we've been telling the school board. I think back in January, our budget projection showed about $3.4 million deficit. Remember, we've reduced the enrollment down to 20 student growth, so that deficit has grown a little bit because of that. And the idea is to spend fund balance for budget stabilization and professional educators to cover that for a one-year basis. Our debt levy for building projects that we've done over the last 20 years for referendum approved is $24.2 million. Our community service levy is for those programs you can see listed there. The projected levy for community service is $1 million. Our expenses are actually a little bit more than $1 million, but we do have some carryover. So we're going to use that carryover so we don't have to fully levy for community service. Projected total levy for the district, you can see it broken down by funds. I'll skip over that, but you can see what each fund is doing. Our total levy is 79.9 million. That would be a 3.8% increase. The tax or mill rate currently is $9.86. It is projected to go down to $9.31. I want to put some caveats on that. That's with a 10% property value growth. We won't know property value growth actual till October 1st. That also has a big factor with equalized aid. And as I mentioned with the Milwaukee School District, we won't, and we for sure won't know our equalized aid till October 15th. So that has an impact on our mill rate. Also, potential referendum would have an impact on that mill rate. And also with the school board, sometimes we've done some debt defeasance in the past that impacts that mill rate. So don't get too excited, hung up on that mill rate. Again, right now it's preliminary, and we'll see where the next few months take us on all those different things I just mentioned. I want to talk just a little bit on fund balance. So our fund balance for Sun Prairie School District is low when you compare us to other size districts. You'll see that on the next slide. But we've been, it's been a priority of the school board and Dr. Sarin to increase our fund balance, and you'll see that we've done that. So our fund balance for Sun Prairie is about 22%. This is going back to fiscal year 22. We don't have new information for last fiscal year yet, but hasn't changed a lot. So you can see we're on the lower end of the districts our size, but we're not on the bottom. That's good. And we have a little ways to go to get in the middle of the pack, but you can see, again, we're not where other districts fall for fund balance. But you can see on this next slide, as I said before, we've really built up our fund balance over the last 7 years now, 7-8 years to where it is now. And again, that's just due diligence of the board and Brad and some other people to build up that fund balance so we don't have to short-term borrow so much money and things like that. So that's really good work by the school board. So what's going to happen next? We have to close out our fiscal year on June 30th. We continue to monitor that budget to see if we need to make budget adjustments for next year. And then so we'll make adjustments as needed. probably for about the next month and a half. We also have a public hearing on the budget at the school board meeting on July 22nd. August 29th or thereabouts, the school board will act on the proposed budget. That proposed budget gets taken to the school board. Our annual meeting is October 7th at Sun Prairie East High School. And then by the end of October, the school board needs to adopt the original budget. And then how the referendum plays into that, we'll have a discussion about that. But you can see that's the topics that will be, or the future for this 24-25 fiscal year. So that wraps up my report. As always, if you have any questions, just reach out to me with those. Thanks.